I wake you up? Oh, here we are. So I'll call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, January 12th. Are there any additions to the agenda? None from administration. In which case I'll move the agenda be approved as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We have one delegation. Is anybody introducing, or come on up, Gita? Welcome to Council, or to the Committee of the Whole.
Your Worship, members of Council, I'm very happy to be here this afternoon to introduce to you Gita Steingard. She is the manager of the Canmore Illusions Gymnastics Club. The club moved into their new home and space in the Canmore Recreation Centre this spring, and they're enjoying great success. So Gita is presenting this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for inviting me here today. And on behalf of Canmore Illusions Gymnastics Club, I'm really honored to be here and to share our story with you. As MJ mentioned, my name is Gita, and I am the general manager at Canmore Gymnastics. I'm also the club's past president, and first and foremost, I'm the mother of two very busy boys who partake in both of the gym's recreation and competitive programs. Before sharing our story with you, I would like to take you back to the beginning of Canmore Gymnastics. In 1994, Canmore resident and former gymnast Marty Pawlowski started an after-school gymnastics program at Elizabeth Rummel School. A year later, several advanced gymnasts from that program formed a small competitive gym club. They used the gymnastics facilities that were available at the Canmore Rec Centre. In September 1996, a parent committee was formed and the club was registered under the Societies Act under the name of the Rocky Mountain Illusions Gymnastics Club. In 2000, the club changed its name to Canmore Illusions Gymnastics Club and relocated to the Peaks of Grassy Gym. Over a span of 12 years, the club grew to capacity, and in 2012, the club maxed out at 220 kids. Additionally, CIGC had to turn away 60 kids who were left out and on our waiting list. Interestingly, in 2012, our club was faced with a growing deficit. To meet the needs of the various levels within gymnastics, we needed qualified coaches. To afford this, we needed to offer competitive salaries that enabled coaches to live in Canmore. At the same time, we had an increase in demand to host competitions, bringing visitors to Canmore from across Canada. But to do so, we had to move our gym to the arena, which was proving to be very costly and inefficient. At the heart of this growing deficit was our continued dedication to offer affordable gymnastics to participants in the Bow Valley. CIGC is 100% committed to offering affordable programming to all kids, teens, and adults. With busting recreational programs, a growing demand for a competitive program that met provincial and national standards, the board started down a path of looking for a bigger space. This started with a business plan and a rather desperate bid to the town of Canmore to move into the old pool space. In May of 2015, CIGC moved to a space that, a 10,000 square foot space. Our new home is proving to be a wonderful success, and we are very grateful to the town of Canmore in believing in our vision. The increase in space has enabled Canmore Gymnastics to accomplish great things. Numbers have grown from 220 to 347. That's a 60% increase. 2 months after moving into our space, we hosted 2 competitions, which brought in over 600 athletes to Canmore. These athletes, their clubs, and family members enjoyed a great competitive gym experience and some wonderful Canmore tourism and hospitality. We've created new drop-in programs to meet the needs of our parents and tots, teens, families, adults, and seniors. We've also created programs that include various levels of trampoline, tumbling, dance, adult movement, adaptive sports, and special needs. We created a parkour program that has fulfilled a wonderful demographic in the community, that being our young and mid-teenage boy groups. We've also added birthday parties, which is proving to be very popular for our families and their young children. We are booking school groups ranging from field to Exshaw, creating gymnastics opportunities to children who might not have the means or resources to experience the many benefits that gymnastics offers. This past summer, our summer camp participation numbers increased by over 400%. This increase demonstrated to our club that the community really does need parent daycare. We were excited to meet this need, and as a result are working to ensure that our gym partners with the town and the school boards to offer camps during school breaks. February 2016, we are very excited to launch an Active Living for Persons with Cancer program. This program is aligned with the Canmore Cancer Foundation and Health Services. Every Monday, any person impacted by cancer will enjoy a free opportunity to use our gym. So those are our successes. We have had a few challenges. A good challenge would be meeting the demand for the space. It's proving to be a challenge finding time for groups that include the Alpine, Nordic, figure skating, dance, adult, senior, and primary care network. We are managing, but it's been a challenge finding staff and time to meet these needs. We are working with a all-mountain coach from the Lake Louise Ski Club to develop an all-mountain gymnastics program. This will help the community that currently travels to COP to use their foam pit, to stay in Canmore and use our facility. Raising funds to purchase more equipment has also been a challenge. As a result of tripling our space, the need for equipment and mats to cover the cement floor has been a priority for us. We are finding that the chalk in the gym is proving to be somewhat taxing on the mechanical system in the space, but we are working with the town and maintenance to find a solution there. Though it's only been 8 months, I'm happy to report that we are operating with a positive cash flow while keeping our goal of offering affordable programming for the community of Canmore. So that is my story. Thank you so much for listening. You're welcome to come to our drop-in program anytime.
And thanks for that presentation and remembering the last time council was there and how pathetic we looked once we jumped in the foam pit. I don't know, floundering around in there. That's a good presentation. It's really, really great to hear about your success. Given the history of the development, and you'd anticipated one of my questions, which was around the financial success, and great to hear that you're seeing a positive cash flow. That's excellent. You'd mentioned the problem around staffing. What are your staff numbers, and what would be ideal for you?
Sure. So if I could just bring you back to our old space, we had we were operating basically 5 days a week. We had 5 full-time coaches and 1 part-time coach. So now we're needing to operate 7 days a week, but we still have 5 full-time coaches. So actually we just had an interview yesterday. We're also developing our coaches in training program, which is for teenagers starting as young as 13 who can mentor with our current coaches, just to help provide support for our coaches. The challenge really is finding coaches who can earn a wage in our gym and still live in Canmore. So it's tricky.
It's not an uncommon problem. You mentioned the number of registered members, but I didn't catch that. So you went from 320, you said, to...
We went from 220.
220.
And we're now at 347.
Yeah,
and of that, if I can break it down, Canmore Gymnastics offers a competitive stream of gymnastics that consists of approximately 60 kids. So in that category, there's a provincial stream and a national stream. So the national, I mean, this this can take a child to the Olympics if they wanted to. So that's that path, but then we also have a recreational stream, which includes badges, et cetera, and then we actually have non-badge programs, which would be our trampoline and dance and parkour, et cetera. So we're really trying to offer something for everyone.
That sounds great. Councillor Sanford, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's great to
Pleasure.
hear you're so successful. We were very impressed at seeing what you did with this space, and it was terrific to see the community
Thank you.
actually using it to that benefit.
Thank you.
I had a question for you about you mentioned that booking was an issue or a complexity for you. Are you using an online booking system at all?
Like
you
to
have-
book the space,
Yeah,
for
because
instance?
you've got space outside of your gymnastics use that you're,
Sure. So when we moved into the new space, we actually moved from a program called ActiveNet, which was a gymnastics-specific system. It was also very expensive. So we abandoned that program. We switched to Zone 4, which is a local operation, I guess, for bookings. But in terms of booking, well, you can book your birthday parties, you can book your program, but beyond that, school groups wouldn't go on, for instance, to Zone 4 to book that. They would book through myself.
So are you considering having some sort of community access booking system in the future, just to meet your difficulty with booking the space?
Well, we haven't explored that. We certainly could do that. Our drop-ins are proving to be very popular. Every quarter I have to report the list of drop-ins to Alberta Gymnastics Federation for insurance purposes. Last quarter we had 700 kids and adults drop into the facility. So for drop-in, they can go online and purchase a drop-in card, which is like a punch card system that they can use, to flash and drop in.
Good.
Yeah. So I certainly, we could definitely look at maybe a more efficient system.
Well, maybe you're just getting to that level now that
Yeah.
it needs to be considered.
Yeah, we're figuring it out
Thank you.
quickly. Thank you.
Councillor Seeley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
It's really good to see how successful you've been and the program growing and everything. You said you hosted 2 competitions. What was the general feeling about those competitions of people visiting the area and I guess our own local participants? Can you just
It's
explain?
fantastic. We were exceptionally excited not having to relocate a gym to the arena. We've always had to do that, and it's been a massive undertaking to move the vault and the rings and all of that into the arena. So that in itself was, our volunteers were very happy. Interesting, I'll laugh, I didn't bring the data on our summit, is what it's called, but I think we had about a 30 or 40% increase in our participants for our summit. So that speaks to, families love to come to Canmore.
Right.
And so, they're all booking hotels and eating restaurants. And in fact, we actually initially only, in the past, would do 1 summit competition, but because of the demand, we had to do 2. So one weekend was the women, and then another weekend was the men. So it was really exciting.
Fantastic.
It's a
Thank
lot
you.
of great energy. Yeah, you should all come.
Just one other curiosity for me is around the interface with the walking track, and how's that look from your perspective?
Well, initially it really wasn't picking up a lot of momentum. We had really low numbers. I'll be honest. I think with the grand opening, there may have been 1 or 2. So working with the town, we've been able to get the word out and kind of identify some of the challenges in terms of why it wasn't working. Transportation is an issue too, getting seniors to the walking track, but probably 6 months in, it's really starting to pick up momentum. We really, I think, had to kind of tweak it to see sort of what worked, what time of day worked, that sort of thing. Our coaches are having to work to move all of our equipment to accommodate the walking track. That isn't ideal, I'll be perfectly honest, because our gym is right to the edge, just our matting runs right to the edge. So when the walking track is open, we have to move equipment kind of within the yellow line. But it's fine, we have a good system, and I think MJ has some data in terms of the numbers.
There are definitely, since November, big increase in participation, as Geeta mentioned. In terms of our totals and demographics, we've seen through a tracking system at the front desk of the rec center, 40 adults, 217 seniors, that is 65 and plus when it comes to our system, tracking system, and 1 family. So definitely quite a bit of participation. More so in the last basically 4 weeks since the weather is a little bit cooler. So yeah.
Great, thanks for that. And I think for the presentation is really great. It's not at all surprising, honestly, to me to hear how successful Illusions has become there. It's a great facility. It's certainly changed from the first time I walked into the old gym and 25 years ago, I guess, and 2 young daughters were taking with Marty, starting to walk on the little balance beam and all that. So it's grown, and the success has grown along with our community. It's fabulous, and thanks for the work that all of you folks are doing in that venue. And thanks for coming. We'll look forward to having you back another time for another.
Sure, I'll bring some
positive
photos
report.
next time.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Then I'll look to the minutes of the Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, December the 8th. Are there errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move the minutes be approved as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Now looking to item D1, respectful workplace policy. Ms. Sauvé?
Good afternoon, Your Worship.
See, we only have 4 here to make it less imposing for you.
It's going to be a little bit like a tennis match, I think. Thank you. I'm here today to present a respectful workplace policy draft for your review and input. So why are we doing that? Well, the town does currently have a respectful workplace environment policy in effect, but it's nearing its 10th birthday. So it's really time to update it, have a look at it, and that gives us an opportunity to really improve it and align it with our culture. Also, I think it's important to note that having a policy like this isn't really only just aligned with the town's vision of valuing people as its strongest asset, it's also bringing us into compliance with provincial legislation. So it's something we need to do. A few highlights of the draft policy. The most important thing is that it states the town's commitment to ensuring we have a respectful workplace so that the people here, our people, are treated respectfully, fairly, and with honesty and dignity, and that in turn they also treat others respectfully, fairly, and with honesty and dignity. Like the current policy that we have in effect, the draft policy also references the town's commitment to providing a workplace in alignment with both Alberta human rights legislation as well as Alberta's occupational health and safety legislation. So for reference, what that means, under OHS, we're required to provide or do what we can reasonably do to prevent our employees from experiencing violence in the workplace. So we're committing to that with this. And then under human rights legislations, we do have a few responsibilities. The most important one is that we're required to provide a workplace that's free from discrimination on the basis of the protected grounds. And so the Alberta Human Rights Act gives us those protected grounds, and they are race, color, ancestry, place of origin, religious beliefs, gender, age, physical disability, mental disability, marital status, family status, source of income, and sexual orientation. So by having this policy, we're committing to preventing the people who enjoy our workplace from discrimination on the basis of those grounds. We're also required to have procedures in place to address and identify issues. And also, the human rights legislation requires that all services be delivered without discrimination. And so by setting an expectation for all of our people to behave this way, we're really ensuring that our services are also delivered without discrimination. So we're really covering all the bases with this. So it's different. Typically, so the first thing to note is the template is really different. So typically when we come to council with a draft policy for update, we'll provide you with a redlined version. We didn't do that in this case because our current policy is in an old template, our new policy is in a new template, and that results in a completely redlined version that's difficult to read. So we gave you copies of both policies to see. Other than that, there really are three notable changes or shifts to talk about. The first one is the scope. So the draft policy really is more clear in its inclusion of everyone who enjoys our workplace. So this workplace isn't just employees' workplace, it's everyone who works here. So that includes council, that includes volunteers, that includes contractors, and that includes our business partners that we work with. So those groups were included in the old, they are included in our current policy, it's just not as clear. This one's got it right from the get-go, right at the start, so it's clear as soon as you read it who this applies to. The second big change is really in the framing. The draft policy shifts our framing. It's not as focused around health and safety, it's not built around health and safety. It includes health and safety, and that's important, but it's really focused on a respectful workplace in general. It also shifts the focus from all of the behaviors that are undesirable and not to be tolerated, and really it defines what our goal is, what we're aiming to achieve with the respectful workplace, and then it defines what behaviors that is and what it isn't. And then I think the third big change to note is around the application of the policy. So our draft policy really shifts us from a complaint-driven, investigation-driven look and take on things to one that really allows an understanding that conflict occurs in the workplace, and often there are better ways of resolving it than just going straight to complaint, investigation, finding out who did what wrong and what we're gonna do about it. So the policy does still require that we have a mechanism in place for complaints and investigations, and that really is important. It just also allows room for alternative and ideally preventive mechanisms for achieving what we're trying to set out to do. So there's really a little bit more support for people to raise concerns in a way that affects change and isn't just punitive. So in summary, this policy really is the town's commitment to providing a respectful workplace for everyone who enjoys it. There's clarity on what that means, and then it outlines who's responsible for what in order for us to achieve success. So what's next? Following your input and direction today, we plan to update the policy accordingly, and then we're going to engage the town's managers and supervisors in the final stages of the development of the supporting procedures and training plan. And then once all of that is done, we plan to bring the policy back to council and to ask to have this one adopted and the old one rescinded. And our target for that is the March 15th business meeting. So that's it for me. Thank you all for your time and attention, and ask if there are any questions and comments.
Thanks very much. That was a great presentation, and I think it's really well-written policy. I recall discussions back in 2006 around the existing policy, and that was it was timely and it was a good policy. But to your point, there's some embellishments, improvements that we can look to, and I particularly like the text around better defining what workplace, respectful workplace means in regards to one-off incidents or situations of mutual conflict. I think that's important to note that. I had one question. In the existing policy, it's specific to note that the policy applies to all activities and includes at Town Canmore social functions, but that's not specified in the new policy. And was that?
Yes, that is an update that has been made since the agenda package went out. That was feedback we received immediately, and that is going to be included, social functions.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, I do recall an incident several years ago where Councillor, as it happens, was treated to some fairly abusive behavior at a town party, and it wasn't on town facility, so So that's going to be adjusted in the final draft, or when it comes
Yes,
forward?
it is already in the
Okay.
adjusted draft, yes.
Great. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Sauvé. I had a question about the transition from the old policy to this new policy where you are including council as part of the process. I'm just wondering, given that we have a procedural policy that we follow, we are also governed by the MGA, and we could have, at this point in time, I don't believe we do have one in place, but a code of conduct.
We do.
How do you see, we did end up passing it? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, but is that
Yeah.
a separate code of conduct, though?
Council has a governance policy which was approved, and it outlines how you will behave in your job of making good decisions for the community. So it does outline respectful workplace guidelines.
Okay. So it's embedded in that, in the governance policy?
Mhm.
Okay. Because I'm just wondering how council fits into this list in the essence that one of the consequences for this kind of behavior could be termination of employment, which we wouldn't really be subject to because of.
So the policy does say that employees can be terminated, and that contractors' services may be terminated as well. But we can't fire members of the public, and we can't fire councillors, and we also can't fire business partners. But this is a workplace. This is your workplace as well. And this policy isn't just about how we treat each other. It's also about how we're treated by others. We do have a responsibility to ensure that we're dealing with inappropriate behavior from the public towards employees and council and contractors and business partners as well when they're working with the town. So I think from that perspective, it's important to include council in here. Same with the public. I think when issues arise, the intention is that what this does is sends us into a resolution mode. So we have discussions, we try to change the behavior. And the other thing I think is if you're making a statement that a respectful workplace is important, then you should be committed to also behaving in a way that lends to that. And so I think from that perspective, it's really important to include council.
I guess my concern is that the council has a number of different ways that we are currently controlled, or
Yes.
that different governance policy that we have to adhere to. So for us to be specifically embedded in this one, that would be my concern.
So is the question that the two policies contradict one another, or is it fair to say that they're aligned and build on one another? Do they preclude one another? I don't know that the government's policy really speaks to how you're treated by the public.
But we do have mechanisms in place to, for instance, banning public from different facilities if their behavior is inappropriate, et cetera.
Yep.
The other question I had was, you've got a very extensive list under G of all the kinds of inappropriate or disrespectful behavior. How would you manage a situation where people perceive that they've had disrespectful behavior leveled at them when it was not necessarily the intention of another staff person or a council member or a manager or a contractor to do that? So perception of having something like this happen to you.
Well, and that's exactly why that third change is really important in this, is because often it is perception and it can be resolved through conversation. So if you feel like something's been leveled at you, the idea is that it's not going to be leveled at you again. So you have the opportunity to raise it and work through it and get to a place that's workable. And then only if you can't resolve it would you go to the stage where it would be a formal complaint, and then we'd have to investigate and make a determination as to whether or not that was indeed disrespectful behavior, and now what are we going to do about it? So I think that what you're saying is the perception of this behavior. That's exactly why we want to have a different process that doesn't just require a complaint, because perception is really important. You need to raise it and go through a resolution process.
Okay. I just had one more question, is that right? On page 3, there's a suggestion that more resources would be required. How do you see that changing in the department?
On page 3.
3 of the policy, or
3 of the policy, yeah.
what bullet point is that?
Let me just find it again. It says, under A, bullet A, elected officials consider the allocation of resources for successful implementation of this policy in the annual budget process.
On an ongoing basis. If there are concerns that need to be addressed and we do require resources, we would ask for them, and this would be the policy that we would refer to as support for that. We currently don't foresee any additional need of resources.
So you don't see a new infrastructure
No.
within the department to
No.
deal with things differently than you do at this point in time?
No. And we did plan we plan to have a training plan in effect for this, and all of that will be delivered within our current budget, so, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you for all those answers.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions from members of council? Seeing none, thanks very much for the presentation, and look forward to having this come back for approval. I think it's a really well-drafted policy.
Thank you.
Thank you. That will turn to E1, Councillor updates. Few councillors not here, so we can't ask questions of them. And as you'll note, I felt I had nothing significant to report myself. But if any of the councillors present have questions for other members here, hit your button. Did you have a question? No. So then we'll move on to F1, Service Area Reports. And we'll move down through the various reports as we normally do. Any questions in regards to the CAO's office, Section A, or Section B, Municipal Services? I have a couple of questions under Recreation Services. The grant that was received from the Winter Games Legacy Program through the Rotary Club, which is great. Just a couple of questions there. What portion of the budget is that $7,500 represent? Ms. O'Brien?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure.
Okay. And for future planning, is this program envisioned to always be grant funded, or if there are not grants, then would it become a part of the operating budget, or?
Right now, there's no plan to replace it in terms of operating funds. So right now, the plan is for it to continue to be grant funded.
Great, thank you. And a question just around the new Peaks of Grassy Gymnasium, which great to see it being successful and well used. Is there a staffing impact associated to that?
Staffing impact for the town?
Yeah, for the Peaks of Grassy Gymnasium.
The idea of the Peaks of Grassy Gymnasium that we did report to council would that the costs would be incurred by the teams that were using the space. So they would be paid for by the teams using the space. So we're hiring staff, but it's reimbursed through the fees that are used to use the space.
Okay, so we have trainers or whatever on the town Canmore staff, but the costs are 100% covered by rental from Peaks of Grassy Gym?
So we have current staff like Muriel, who does facility bookings, who are taking on Peaks of Grassy Gymnasium from a bookings point of view. We have Jim's time and some of the recreation staff who
Sure,
meet with
of
groups
course,
to
yeah.
get it all going. But once it's all going, direct service delivery is done on a cost recovery basis.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell? Okay. Sorry.
Just a question, upward trend with dog bites, what are we talking for a trend? A couple large numbers? I got you.
I can get you the specific numbers if you wish,
Please, and
Councillor.
I'm just curious if we laid any charges.
Okay, I can find that out.
Thank
It
you.
was basically over the Christmas holiday season that they were noticing this.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Worship. Still under protective services, I wonder if you could just clarify this statement. Peace officers would like to strongly encourage residents to have their pets on leash while off private property and while at dog off-leash parks.
I think it's just a typo.
Yeah, I'm agreeing that doesn't make sense. I think the intent was peace officers would like to strongly encourage residents to have their pets on leash while off of private property and not
Not
at the
at
dog off-leash
Oh.
parks.
I'm wondering if the intent, that I was confused about the intent. Is it possible that the peace officers are asking for dogs to be on leash until they're actually in the park, as opposed to just let them out of their car off leash?
No, I don't
no?
think so. I think the intent is please have your dogs on leash while not in the dog
Oh,
off-leash
okay.
park or not on your own private property.
Okay, because I have heard concern from people saying that the off-leash dog thing gets overwhelming because the dogs get in and out of cars off-leash as opposed to being on leash until they get into the park. So I'm trying to understand. what
Yeah,
that
I don't think that
statement
was the intent, was to address that issue.
means. Okay, so it's just, you're thinking it's a typo?
I'm thinking it's a confusingly written sentence.
Okay.
For clarification, it means please keep your pets on leash while they're not on your private property or in the off-dog leash area.
Okay, thanks.
Moving on then, are there any questions regarding Section C, municipal infrastructure? Seeing none, then we'll move on to item G1, Council Resolution Action List. Are there any questions regarding that document? Seeing none, moving on to H1 and 2, just the reports from Regional Partnership Board of Directors and the Bow Valley Regional Housing Bulletin. Any comments, questions, anything at all? Seeing none, I believe we've come to the moment for me to move an adjournment. Those in favor? Opposed? There we go.